Okay, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for giving the opportunity to present the paper. As you already told you, my name is David. I'm just fellow at UCL, and today I will present you the paper I'm writing along with my colleagues, David and Tomas, as the research title, Anatomy of Stablecoin Related to Terra-luna case. Indeed, this research has been already published. They have been recently accepted by financial secretary. If you are interested in it, if you like the presentation, you can read the full paper. And in this study, we describe the main events that led to the Terra project failure in May 2022 after being attacked by a group of anonymous traders. In particular, we consider 4 points. Okay, the paper is divided into 4 sections. First, we review in a systemic way all the news. There were a lot of news about it. From very different social media sources. We discussed the Terra project, okay, we give information about this project, his facility, and the dependence with his liquidity provider and or protocol. Then the third and fourth steps, we identify the crash-triggered events, okay, the main events during this crash with Bitcoin, Luna, and USD. And finally, we analyze in some sense the systemic risk or the shock effect the cryptocurrency market considering 61 highly capitalized cryptocurrencies. Then, having said that, moving forward to the introduction to the description of the Terra project, it's indeed a quite simple system, as perhaps you already know. According to the Terra white paper, his underlying protocol relied on use a 2-point system. Okay, you have first of all Terra, that is the stablecoin, the algorithmic stablecoin that is not backup. Here we don't have any kind of collateral, traditional collateral, there's no gold or US dollar, anything is a software, and it's because of that it's an algorithmic stablecoin. And the most important one is Terra USD. It could be Terra Euro, Terra LW, but the most important one is the dollar, is pegged to the dollar. And Terra should be equal to 1. And Luna token is the counterpart, is the native currency that is used. It should be used. Obviously, you know that it didn't work, but should be able to reduce the volatility from the stablecoin. And indeed, it's so interesting to underline that we are not talking about a small project. Indeed, USD was the 4th largest stablecoin, only behind Tether, USDC, and Binance with 18 billion. And Luna was literally the 10th largest, biggest crypto by market cap, with 41 million. Then we are talking about something quite relevant. It was not a small project. And there were 2 main concepts that were practically the core of this protocol. And the first one is that the protocol stabilized USD Terra prices by ensuring the supply and demand were in equilibrium. Okay, we have a Terra and Luna pool, and they should be in equilibrium through arbitrage. In other words, we need good traders, arbitrators, in order that this protocol can work. And the second point, and this is the more relevant one, is that through the Terra protocol AMM, algorithmic market mode, all the arbitrators were allowed to trade $1 worth of Luna for 1 USD person. The example of it here, you have the figure, but the simple example is that if you see that the USD price Terra was below $1, for instance, imagine 99 cents, it doesn't matter, then you can acquire 1 USD for this price. Afterwards, you swap it for $1 of Luna, you sell Luna, and you take the profit. Then this process continues, you keep buying USD, there's an increase in demand, an increase in price, and the price should be again equal to 1. That is pegged to the US dollar. This is the main objective, and the same if it's above $1. And indeed, this was quite good. I mean, in the sense that the success was very, very fast. Indeed, too fast. If you check here, the green area is the one that underlined the success of the Terra project. And it was very fast. More or less, we are talking about November 2021 to May before the collapse. They increased practically from zero, from nothing, to be one of the largest projects in terms of a stable coin. Then the point here is, okay, how they attract so many users. Where's the trick? I mean, was debated that practically in 6 months, we are one of the largest stablecoin protocols in the market. And the debate was indeed the anchor protocol, that was the liquidity provider in this stablecoin protocol. Anchor was indeed a second protocol, okay, borrowing or lending protocol if you prefer, that allowed all the users to lend capital, okay, USD, and borrow capital using bonded asset as collateral. Here, the main base of the funding strategy is found because they offer up to 20% annual percent yield, in theory, without risk. Indeed, if you want right now, you can check using YouTube or social or different social media sources that you can find a lot of people creating videos saying that you could earn 20% without any kind of risk. Obviously, this was not true. And here, you can observe that with bonded assets, the borrower should pay this 20% that is gained by the lender. But here, okay, it's quite nice. I mean, you read it, it's like, okay, I want to be rich, give me the 20% without risk, everything is perfect. But then you check the dashboard, the balance sheet, the subsets of Anchor protocol. There are things that are a little bit smelly. I mean, this was worse than FTX balance sheet. If you check practically in the Anchor, all deposits of USD in Anchor compared to the total supply was around the 20% in June 2021. Well, it's quite good. 20% is in the saving account, and the rest is like, we could say, a minimum exchange. But before the collapse, the 75% of all the Terra tokens were deposited in Anchor protocol. In other words, this stablecoin idea was indeed and only a saving account. No one was using this as a minimum exchange. It was only, okay, if you are promising me 20% of interest rate, capital increase, give me money. But who was paying it? The borrower in theory. But we can see that there were no borrowers paying. We had the 35% borrower deposit compared to the total in 2021, but 1 year later, it goes down to 20%. It wasn't sustainable. Indeed, you could read a lot of papers, a lot of news that were highlighting that it was impossible, it was unsustainable. And what is quite interesting, what is important to highlight is that this is not new. Indeed, terra-luna was prone to failure by nature. All the algorithmic stablecoins have 3 problems. The first one is that they need a support level of baseline demand. And this was quite solved because they use Anchor protocol as the base. I give you 20%, obviously, this was not true, but they could attract more and more people like a Ponzi scheme in order to do it work. But then the problem, as you may imagine, is that they need the participation of willing arbitrators. And here is the we can find the problem, because I don't know how many traders, how many investors you know, but perhaps they are polite, they are nice, but if they observe a weakness in a system, if they observe, they take the opportunity to make profit, they take it. And here they have the best opportunity to destroy a system making profit. And this is not new. I mean, here one of the most relevant points on the line is that terra-luna was practically the copy and paste case of Iron Finance in June 2021, because it was exactly the same system. You have an algorithmic stablecoin, you have the counterpart, and it was attacked, collapsed, and disappeared. And indeed, you read something about it, you can check our paper. Iron Finance was attacked in the same way that terra-luna. Then, more or less, beforehand, we already know that it went to collapse. And finally, once the history demonstrates that algorithmic stablecoins cannot work in the crypto exchange switchboard already highlight this point. This kind of system is quite fragile to any kind of attack. If they attack, they can create panic in the market. We have a bank run, and indeed, this happened on May 2022. Social media sources relate this attack. This is quite a conjecture that nobody can prove, with the use of Bitcoin short position that stopped around the of May. And indeed, this paper, what we are going to do right now is to try to shed more light on all the events that happen part of data. And we use two kinds of data set. The first one is hourly gross pricing data, the hourly data, from crypto compare, considering the 61 cryptocurrencies from more or less the period what we need, 1st of May to 16th of May. And with this, we analyze all the events and also the dependent structure of the market. And then we use directly public trades, okay, high frequency data, transaction data, in order to analyze the hourly patch, in order to see more or less the selling and buying pressure during this period. And here you have the main events. Indeed, we detect practically 4 relevant events. The first one is is the 5th of May, where we detect that Bitcoin, USD, and Luna prices, this is first scale just to improve the comprehensibility of the figure, start to decrease. At the point B, the 7th of May, Luna and USD effect from US dollar, they suffer the first attack. They start to sell all the reserves they had in order to regain, in order to take again. They more or less were able to get this, but you see, as you can see, everything collapsed. USD lose completely the peg, and Luna goes practically to zero. If we don't see there practically the detail of these events, in A, what we observe is that according to social media, private market hackers short sold Bitcoin with the final aim of spreading panic into the market. Okay, this was more or less the main idea we knew. In B, what we observe is that USD lost its peg due to a liquidity pool attack. And this is very interesting, and this is very important to remind, because Iron Finance was attacked in the same way. And terra-luna was a copy-paste project considering Iron Finance, and the attackers only used the same way to attack this project. And the end was exactly the same, that it was the collapse of Terra. Then they start selling everything, but they suffer the second and last attack at the point C and bankrupt. As the final idea, the Terra founders try to propose a new measure that the only thing that they try is to save, to rescue USD, but deleting Luna. Obviously, this was a disaster, and it underlined was put an end to the problem. Now, if we try to see more or less, if we need to shed more light on the news, we can see here, this is the hour imbalance for Bitcoin, retail underlying selling pressure. Here we have buying pressure. And what we indeed observe is that the 5th of May, there's a peak of selling pressure. It could be possible that there were Bitcoin short position in order to rise to the collapse of Terra. Obviously, as you can read here, we cannot confirm this. We cannot say there were Bitcoin short position in order to take down. But it's true that if it happened, it should be here. It should be the 5th of May. Because above all, we do not detect any kind of we do not detect any point A with Luna or just any kind of selling pressure. If you check, we did Ethereum, like on all the biggest crypto, we didn't see any relevant selling pressure. It was only detected with Bitcoin. Here you have more information, okay, that you have in the paper. You want to read it more or less around after the 7th of May. Terra sold everything. I mean, everything means everything. 80,000 Bitcoin, 40,000 BNB, all the research in order to rescue the project, but it was practically impossible. A bank run means a bank run. And in the Anchor protocol, I consider that 75% of all the USD were on Anchor. Well, it boosted the bank run of all the system. Finally, the 9th of May, they suffered another attack. They sold the rest, but it was practically impossible. And the 11th, even that they didn't have more reserves, they tried to change a little bit the code, but I mean, it was the larger source that implied nothing. And as you can see, we have a Luna drop from a value of $80,000 on the 5th of May to, well, this is nothing 1 week later. And we only need 1 week in order to destroy one of the largest DeFi systems in the crypto market. And now, in order to analyze more of the dependent structure of the cryptocurrency market during this period, we use Pearson correlation coefficient, okay, weighted with exponential smoothing, and as the network, we use the TMFG, okay, triangular maximum filter graph. And this is quite simple, okay, that we use the Pearson correlation with exponential weights in order to avoid the effect of outliers. So we have here a lot of shocks, then it's necessary to use a structure of different weights. And given that we are interested in the dynamics over time, we use a rolling window. And finally, in terms of the network, we construct our own network with the TMFG because it allows us to analyze only the most relevant connection that we deliver. And the rest, as a measure of network centrality, we consider the agent vector centrality because it's one of the more general, as you well know, measure to analyze the centrality for a given system. And we again consider 24-hour rolling window to analyze the dynamics over time. And here we have the results that practically support all the news. And although it is interesting to observe, here you have, okay, just in case, the exponential Pearson correlation over time. Tracking the blue lines are only the average, okay, is the correlation of all the system, the average in Kraken, the cryptocurrency exchange that we use. And we observe that from C to D is where we detect the highest correlation in the market. What is, well, quite normal. Here we have the shock where everything is correlated. And Luna is indeed causing this problem. Luna was the weak point, it was the weak factor of the system, and it was attacked, and then after it disappeared from the market. Well, it's quite interesting because what we are observing here is that the cryptocurrency market is very sensitive to shocks. We already know this, but it reacted quite fast. I mean, they deleted Luna from the system, and Bitcoin and all the cryptocurrency more or less were able to recover the dynamics that they had before the shock around 1 week. And if we use the network approach, we are indeed observing practically the same. Luna is detected in the center of the network around the second part of the first part of the attack, and Bitcoin was indeed very relevant before the attack. But could indeed imply that Bitcoin was more or less involved in the attack in some sense. But it could be possible that someone used Bitcoin to break down Luna with shorts of position. And you can observe here the network where Luna was in the middle, or was on the core of the network, was one of the more relevant factors in the collapse. And after that, it disappeared. Okay, it was excluded from the system. And here, what is important to underline as the discussion, and I will end the presentation with this, is that the fact of using stable coins or any kind of token in a given DeFi system that is based, that's relied on the market, okay, on the investor mood is quite dangerous, because as we can observe here, if your system relies on a floating price, okay, Luna is fluctuating according to the demand of supply. Well, if someone creates panic, they are going to destroy your system. And indeed, this is for future research. This fact is what's happened with FTX, but roughly, if you read something about it, the main weakness of the exchange FTX was that they were using FTT, the native currency, as collateral. Someone attacked FTT, FTT is equal to 0, then FTX is equal to 0. In other words, if you are creating any kind of DeFi system, the fact of using any cryptocurrency, any token whose price depends on the market, could indeed jeopardize all the system that you have created. And well, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. A very timely presentation on very timely story. Does anyone have any questions for David? So David, why do you think that this seems to be a phenomenon that's related to this notion of stablecoins in general, right? So where do you see the problem here? Is this really a counterparty risk story? Is this a story with the responsibility of some particular party, the failure of proper management of backing assets? What's the real story here, David?
Well, here there are different stories. The first one is that algorithmic stablecoins, we consider the oldest stablecoins, feel algorithmic stable are the one that should not be used. Okay, if you have if you don't have any kind of collateral, gold, dollar, whichever, then it is going to fail. And this has been demonstrated historically with a lot of examples. Ion Finance is one of them, terra-luna is another one. Then the fact that you can algorithm stable would not be the best solution. I mean, at least you should be able to provide some kind of collateral. And the second point indeed is the point of the transparency, and the Bank of International Settlements already underlined this point with well, I think that they published in October of this year, the principles of the framework for good practice in the stablecoins, where they underline that all these projects should provide, it is as advice, should provide some kind of financial statements where all the relationship that the project have, because here Android protocol was very important, and for instance, if you consider FTX, that was an exchange, they had in the end around 100 entities. It was not only FTX an exchange, but a consolidated system. Then it's necessary, I mean, to provide more transparency in user around.
Right. So it seems like if you're ever pegging these assets, any other questions? Yes, question back there.
Thank you for your presentation. I want to come back to 1 year ago when everyone was talking about Terra has not been released yet, and everyone was waiting for USD to release, for example, December 2021. But when it's released, and these things happen. And at that moment, I was thinking algorithmic stablecoins would be something that would lead to one innovation in terms of stablecoins, but it's failed. For example, other stablecoins such algorithmic stablecoins such as FRAX would lead to the same story. But I want to know what's your perspective and opinion about future of stablecoin, because if we need to build something completely DeFi, we should not work with something like Tether or other stablecoins which are completely centralized. For example, can you rely on crypto collateralized stablecoins like DAO, or even if because they are pegged to not pegged, they are working with cryptocurrencies. If one day Bitcoin or Ethereum lead to zero, they are going to same story will happen.
Practically the story is the same one. If you are using as your collateral crypto, indeed you are going to have the same problem. For instance, in that winter cryptocurrency state. Indeed, for instance, one of the best examples is that Binance, the largest state right now, as proof of reserve, what they have is cryptocurrency. Then in the end, the problem that you are going to have, that you are going to face in the future is the same. You cannot rely on cryptocurrencies in order to defend your own system. Considering the future of stablecoin is quite difficult. Indeed, most of the papers are already underlined that they right now are not a good protocol. Above all, one of them is because of transparency. You are giving your money. For instance, if you read more now, it's better, but even in the case of Tether, the largest one is the first one, there are some percentages that you don't know where your money is. And obviously, in the end, this is the same problem because you are exchanging your money for gold, but you don't know where your money is. Then, first of all, we should provide any kind of, companies should provide some kind of transparency. But then we have the paradox that we are centralizing the system that should be decentralized. Then, well, and indeed, well, if you take more or less the data right now, the system that is the crypto space that should be a decentralized economy is not a decentralized economy because it's practically controlled the transaction are on Binance, and we have also in terms of traders a lot of ways that control the price of each individual cryptocurrency. Then it's quite difficult because in the end we have like a vicious cycle that if you want to improve the system, you need to centralize the system. Then it's not a decentralized system.
Thank you. Another question? I think right here. Oh dear. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your interesting presentation. My question could be to sound strange, but if I ask you if you can make a comparison to the traditional models that you use in finance for centralized finance, which kind of models do you apply? One model or more models in order to find a comparison to this system that you have represented for terra-luna? Thank you.
What do you mean by financial model? Which kind of model we're talking about? I mean,
Financial model
payment
means,
infrastructure?
no, using which kind of operations, financial operations you use concerning the centralized finance, no? If you weren't in a crypto space, which kind of financial operations you put together to have the same operations here?
Yeah, indeed, one of the this point has been on the level practically all the central banks, the Bank International said that indeed that the end DeFi is practically doing the same as centralized finance. I mean, it's not something so innovative in terms of the use. It's true that obviously you can send money wherever you want. I mean, more or less there are some advantages, but in the end, it's not, I mean, a very, very innovative thing. I mean, for instance, you have all the problems. You have the problem of leverage. You have the problem of being hacked. I mean, it's practically very it's not a significant difference. So you can say this in this regard.
So you cannot see any sign of crypto space features.
It's quite complicated. Yeah, above all, we have, for instance, the CBDC. It's not just to be using a stablecoin. Indeed, practically, the main use, okay, in terms of the principal use of a stablecoin is for traders, in the sense that I want to trade. I don't want to exchange my, imagine Bitcoin, Ethereum into USD, and I can use my stablecoin as the parking. I mean, indeed, the universal government defines the stablecoin as the crypto parking as well, the crypto parking where you can hold your stablecoin, your money, and then you trade again. And it's more or less like a white trading option.
So David, that's a really interesting point in particular. We know that there are some jurisdictions like, say, China and Russia that forbid these kinds of exchanges at all.
Yeah,
so
because you can more or less avoid taxes. I mean, but this is the main purpose of a stablecoin.
Well, I mean, it's not just taxes; it's also getting to an exchange, right? I mean, is there evidence that you've seen in your work that this is the reason, really sidestepping certain regulatory limits or barriers?
Well, it's not this war, but if you take more or less the data, you analyze with different on-chain data sources, what you are observing is that practically all, and immediately you check the exchanges, on most of the exchanges, the first option that they are giving you is, okay, instead of Bitcoin USD, you have Bitcoin, whatever stablecoin it is. I mean, and this is the default option because you can avoid to exchange to USD, and then nobody knows where it is because it's on the blockchain. And this is the main thing. Indeed, there's right now a significant increase in the stablecoin. Practically, you check data. That's quite interesting report that you want to read in Glassnode related to FTX, where they observe that all the cryptocurrencies were sold. Obviously, we have a bear market, but they are not out of the system. They are not out. They are on stable coins. Right now, we have the highest stablecoin proportion on the chain, because obviously you can avoid the payment of taxes for a while.
So I guess we'll revisit this again when we have the panel discussion this afternoon on stablecoins. So this is good. I think we've got another question. Tammy, I think. Perfect. Thank you.
David, thank you for the presentation. It's fascinating research. So I'm curious to hear actually about your upcoming FTX research, and how do you plan to structure that? Is it again around this native token being used as collateral? Because as far as things seem to be right so far, at least there seems to be an outright fraud as well. So are you going to put that aside, as part of your work, just not to sort of get diluted, as part of that story? What's your plan?
We are starting right now with my colleagues about FTX because there are a lot of things that are very interesting and that. I don't think that are interesting at all. There are things that we need to think about it for the sake of the system. Because, for instance, FTX, I think that it was the third largest exchange, and the main problem here is that it was like in the vicious circle. Given that there's not any kind of audit process, we don't know anything about it. then they can do whatever they want with your money. And then you can think, okay, we have an exchange, it's only one exchange, one thing, but in the end, if you read the financial statement, the report of the new CEO, they observed that there were 100 entities that were using the money. And indeed, what is more relevant is that in this balance sheet, they create artificial new balance sheet because they didn't exist. Indeed, well, you know, with the former CEO, the balance sheet was an Excel file. Okay, it was only the one sheet that was on. But what they observe right now is that they do not know where the customer deposits are. They do not exist, the customer deposits. Then it's very interesting from very different point of view. The first one, in terms of the infrastructure, obviously, I mean, this is quite obvious. You cannot use a native token for the collateral because if FTT in this case go to zero, your FT, the value of your company is zero. This will happen. Then the second point, and this has been underlined right now by Binance, they are creating this proof of reserve concept in the sense that they want to give some kind of transparency, saying, okay, I have all these cryptos, trust in me, but then in the end, we have the same problem. Okay, if you are creating a proof of reserve, you can just use the traditional audit process to demonstrate your balance sheet. I mean, I don't need a new blockchain system. Give me your account, give me your financial statement, and I can know if you are liquid or not. And again, we have the same issue.
So I think, David, I think what you're saying is that proof of reserve or auditing doesn't externalize. Ultimately, you're responsible.
Yeah, indeed, there have been a lot of critics about it. I mean, this proof of reserve, because it's like it's like something like a new word for the same thing. Because I'm doing, okay, it's proof of reserve concept, but it is the same as we already have.
But you can't externalize that responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, they should do it, but and what is more important, I think that one related to one of the questions is that the collateral that Binance is, did you read the report that when you read the email that they sent, all the collaterals in Binance are first the stable coin used by Binance, the USD, and second cryptocurrencies. Then if we have an attack, if we have a bank run in all the cryptocurrency market, it's more than likely that Binance is going to. And that's why right now the self-custody, the use of cold wallets is quite trendy because it's the best way to at least secure your money.
Thank you, David. So I think that we're out of time for questions, but thank you very much, David.